This is our first video on the Shogun Japan Unit. Japan is an important player in modern-day geopolitics, and its unique historical development has affected the way in which Japan has participated in global events. Throughout its history, Japan has struggled to find the proper way to interact with other countries. At the same time, it has endeavored to establish its own national identity. Issues of foreign relations and national identity became important during the shogunate period in Japan, along with challenges relating to governmental organization, social structure, and national autonomy. Though most historians criticize the shogunate period as lasting from mid 14th century to the mid 19th century, to fully understand developments in shogun era Japan, we need to begin looking at some key events from earlier times. China had a significant impact on the development of early Japan because the two countries were located so closely together, as you can see on this map. The Chinese, however, were stronger and richer than Japan and dominated the Far East, including Korea and Vietnam, both culturally and militarily for centuries. The Japanese incorporated many Chinese ideas and innovations, including Chinese writing script, Chinese literature, and governmental organization and bureaucracy. The most significant Chinese import may have been Buddhism, which was introduced to Japan in the 6th century. Buddhism eventually became highly influential in the political development of Japan. Even though Japan adopted Chinese Confucian and Buddhist traditions, the Japanese did not abandon their native religion, Shinto, which emphasizes veneration and worship of nature. Shinto centers on the belief that all elements of nature, from waterfalls to boulders, contain some elements of the divine, called kami. Unlike other religions, Shinto has no strictly delineated moral code. Instead, it simply stresses purity. In its early history, Japan was organized into a number of clans called uji. Uji were groups ruled by hereditary chiefs. These clans had a hereditary warrior aristocracy, and their rulers tended to be authoritarian. The Yamato State came into existence as the result of the consolidation of seven different uji. Remember the groups of hereditary chiefs? They came together to create the Yamato State. In 587, the Soga Uji won a war of succession and assumed power. Heavily influenced by Buddhism and other Chinese ideas, the Soga incorporated many Chinese elements into the Yamato State, including bureaucracy of merit, organized according to Confucian principles. In 604, the regent prince Shotoku created the 17-article constitution. It was not so much a political document as a set of ideal social behaviors and a moral code that incorporated elements of both Confucianism and Buddhism. In spite of attempts to bring orderliness to the Yamato state, Japan during this time still struggled with issues relating to the role of the emperor and the influence and power of the elite families. A number of elites were unhappy with the politics of the Yamato court, particularly the control exerted by the government and the emphasis placed on Buddhism. The elites managed to successfully install a new emperor, Tenchi, who was supported and advised by a powerful aristocratic family, the Fujiwara. Although the wealthy Japanese clans had helped him gain his position and power, the emperor soon came to regard them as a liability. Tenchi, under the influence of the Fujiwara, pushed through what became known as the Tangka reforms. These were designed to cast the Emperor of Japan as the absolute ruler in the same mold as the Son of Heaven, as the Chinese emperor was so called. To control the families, the emperor undermined the source of their wealth by forbidding private land ownership. He then built loyalty by rewarding those he favored with land grants. Just like in medieval Europe, how the king would give land to the barons to be loyal to him. The government also instituted a census and used it to implement a form of taxation based on the one used in China. In 701, the Taiho Code modified and legally enshrined many of the changes begun by the Taika reforms. Most importantly, it set up a Chinese style centralized bureaucracy for running the country. The Imperial Japanese ruling house established a new capital in Nara that was in 710. The city was a copy of the Chinese city Chang'an. Although it was only about one-fourth the size of Chang'an, the court was modeled after the Tang dynasty in China. The Buddhist temples of the Nara period owned land and were politically powerful in their own right. Much of their power came from the emperor's use of the Sutra of the Golden Light as the basis of his right to rule. The sutra stated that law was of the human world and could change rapidly. That meant that the laws of humans and Buddhism could be adapted to the emperor and the politics of the Japanese court as needed. The end of the Nara period was characterized by political struggles to determine who would assume the Japanese throne. Those power struggles between the Japanese clans and Buddhist monasteries from the hills around Nara reached a fever pitch of violence and deceit. To end the conflict, the capital of Nara was moved to the city of Heian in order to move the government away from the Buddhist monasteries that surrounded the former capital city on all sides. That's the end of this video about early Japanese politics and religion.